I'm Eva Oh, and this is the Teakink podcast. I've been a dominatrix since 2011, and I would like to spill the tea on my life. Thank you for listening.
I've officially been called a mature woman on a dating app for the first time. But actually, nobody told me when I was younger that when I was inching up into my 40s that I would become so very desired by the younger set. So much so that I am very puzzled as to how to approach this. So, what kind of tipped this off was that I'm on the dating apps because I'm very specifically looking for playthings, and maybe some sort of submissive that I am actually drawn to. Maybe. But this means that you enter the dating world, and a lot of people around my age are just on the cusp of divorce or very busy with the children, which kind of leaves you in like no man's land in terms of peers in your age group. And so you have like the 20s sort of set, and then you have like the divorced sort of set, which are more like late 40s, 50s. And I'm not really interested in like the late 40s, 50s plus crowd because I see so many of them in work, and I think I'm looking for something different than what I've served for so many years. So that doesn't leave me so much option. That leaves me the younger set, it seems. And they don't seem to be very turned off by my age, which is the story that is told you when you're younger, that women age out and that men have a much longer time horizon in terms of when they are desired or desirable. I mean, when I first started escorting and I was in my agency, the owner, who was, to me, I thought relatively young, maybe in her early 40s at most, she called herself like a baby cougar in her marketing. And that was kind of like the first time I kind of came across some sort of terminology around a woman's age, right? What's like the older dude one, like a silver fox, right? Yeah, I don't know. I guess I have been working for too long with the older men that it's just not on my radar. But yeah, this cougar thing. And I would hear tiny little stories about who would want to hire the cougars. And that it could often be like super young, muscly, whatever it is. But it didn't really register in my head, It felt, I was being introduced to such a huge world, of sex work, and I was already being like in the dungeon for a while, and then I was just starting in this escort agency, and so it was a lot. And so I didn't really take in that information. But that was like the first time that I had ever sort of heard about it. And actually, no, that was maybe the second time. The first time that I had heard about it was an acquaintance of mine, like a social media friend of mine back in a previous life called Cindy Gallop. And she did she opened her TED Talk with, I like to have sex with younger men, I think. I think that was the opening. And it was for her platform, Make Love Not Porn. And about how younger men were fucking like in porn or something. And how she wanted to add more real world sex to that narrative. You call it a narrative? Yeah. But yeah, so I kind of heard that and I kind of like took that information in. But this is like 2 bits of information over a lifetime, you know, over a 30-year lifetime. So at that point. And that wasn't really enough for it to become a process for me to own, to know what I was going to do when I was going to get to this point. This point when I am nobody's actual biological mother, but where people want to start calling me mommy. And I'm sort of buying into it a little bit. But so what tipped off this episode was that I recently went on a date with somebody 18 years my junior, 17 years my junior, 17 years my junior, which is probably the largest age gap I've ever entertained. And funnily, I was invited to the launch of the Bricks magazine Age issue that night, which I thought was hilarious. Beautiful, beautiful alignment. But these things kind of happened. And then I've had more sort of mommy chat crop up in my Instagram, in my here, in my there. People asking if they can use this term. I'm thinking, I need to add to this dialogue. People need to know that this is going to come. And how are you going to navigate this? But I'm processing myself. No answers just yet. But my process is, do I entertain it? How do I entertain it? At what point does that feel okay for me? Is there never an okay point? You know, just a few months ago, I was with a slave of mine who is in his mid-50s, and he was dating people in their 20s, you know, in their early 20s. And I was just asking him questions about how that was, and he didn't think that he was too old for it, which he was very offended by. Good. And how he thought that this was a good thing to sort of jump into. And it wasn't me saying, no, you shouldn't necessarily do it. I was genuinely interested in having a conversation about what was possible, or morally, just moral thoughts around this particular engagement. And he didn't have so much to say, except for feelings of offense. I think I sort of remember if they could communicate, but he's a terrible communicator in a relationship sense. And so I'm not really sure how things would apply. Also, he was mostly dating people who were not from his part of the world. And it did mean that there were huge economic imbalances. And so I also think that is something that you need to take into account as I embark upon this journey of the mommy. But so leading up to this first date ever with such a huge gap, I'm like, really? Do I do this? Just seeing the number, not necessarily engaging yet, you know? It's all right, you know, they made the effort to send me not just your usual but the super whatever. And I'm going to just ask if they've seen what I'm interested in and looking for. And what came back was a lot of thought and a lot of self-awareness on where they were, and their engagement with what it is that I was looking for. And they were answering questions in a way that I thought was more coherent than a lot of people double their age. And I thought, okay, perhaps this is something just worth gently exploring. And what ended up happening was that they are actually an incredible communicator also in real life, not just online and not just in response to texts, but I think they're looking for something more intimate than I am. I'm more looking for some general plaything as opposed to a relationship or one-on-one sort of engagements. I'm more like party one-on-one maybe. but yeah, so but it did really get me thinking, you know. One, people don't tell you that this is going to happen, that you're going to reach this age, and if you are seeking, that there are younger people who are looking, who are interested in you as an older woman. And I really want to go into what the appeal is. I think maybe, hey, yet another idea for a podcast episode. Interview one of these people who have this interest in the term mommy. And yeah, what the motivations are would be great. But mostly it's been an interesting exercise to suddenly realize that my desirability doesn't go down, but shifts markets. Or just so appeals to potentially a different segment. Yeah, but I guess that's maybe something that sex work should have taught me in general, because people do ask, oh, but what are you going to do when you're older? And I already know the answer for that, right? And it's like, actually, there's a market for pretty much anything. There's going to be somebody interested in some niche, you know, and age is a much wider niche than some of the niches that I know about. So, but we have so much dialogue around these silver foxes, these aging old dudes who are going to be able to have access to youth and to remain, if not increase their desirability. But a lot of it is also around financial success, right? Or at least relative to somebody who's just starting off their professional career. I think a lot of it can often be to do with the financial stability that an older person can offer in a world that doesn't have very equal distributions of wealth, as well as the fact that they've just had more time to accrue potential wealth. So I think that is also a fairly obvious appeal when you're sold this narrative of the silver fox, which I've also never really been interested even as a younger person. I always went for people more around my age group, actually. Yeah, I wonder why. Maybe a maximum gap of like 6 or 7 years. But yeah, I mean, I have my reasons now, but when I was much younger, why that never really appealed, not sure. Not sure. But what am I going to do with this? What am I going to do with this? I've slowly started letting the vocabulary creep into my consciousness. You know, I've never been really interested in titles or terms. I use mistress as a formality, and I prefer it over Eva when it comes from slaves and submissives, but I don't get anything erotic out of it. And I don't think I got anything erotic out of a certain title or name across time. But there's something about the mommy. There's something about the mommy that is starting to become appealing in my own consciousness. Perhaps I should embrace this. And perhaps that as long as somebody has a vocabulary and a self critical process, then maybe I personally would feel better to engage with them. Maybe we need to decide for ourselves what those limitations are, right? I'm not sure. We need to be having more conversations about these so that I can become more informed, so that I can make better dating decisions. Can you please do that for me? Yeah. Have I seen any major age gaps around me either? Also not, So I'm really like feeling around in the dark here. And you can't, not that I want to, shift my age on these apps either. It is what it is. And for some reason, it's always what's shown. That's also quite interesting, actually. It's like height is always like, you can't hide it. And age? What else can't you hide? Yeah. But I remember noticing that those two were facets that are always visible, when you're on these apps. And I wonder what it is about those things that are so important that they need to be always known by the other party. Because I think you can hide like religion and drug use and like all of these other things. But what is it about age and height that you must know? And I don't think that I'm actually not looking at the number. I'm like fairly shallow right now. And so I'm looking at the image. Yeah. I'm looking at image and then like a little bit on words to see if you're saying something like a little bit too shallow, which means we probably won't get along. But that's kind of all that I'm looking at. And then unless you send me like a rose or a super like or something, I'm not going to look in great detail or notice like a number. Yeah. And actually, I probably won't notice until we actually go on a date and then I tell you my age and then your eyes go, what? So maybe some of you are also not noticing. But for those who are noticing and for those who are doing the mommy titling, I need more information. I would like to understand more about what do we collectively think is an appropriate term of engagement. I guess for me, in general, it would be about the communication and the self-awareness process thing. But when it comes to age, like, do we have like added protocols around that? I like how this is just turning into me like asking you for dating advice. What else is there? What are potential like pitfalls? I have, because most of people in my age group are like busy parenting or getting divorced. I have more and more friends who are younger. And some of the things that I notice are that they kind of, they don't see me as super equal. Like, I remember running into a few people at this nightclub the other day and they were like, what are you doing here? It's like, what do you think I'm doing? Like knitting? Yeah. And so there they have different expectations of what they think you know about, which maybe is fair. But I've been clubbing for longer than you've been alive. Oh my God. But yeah. Yeah, actually, I went to the Burgine 19th birthday over the weekend, which will give away the fact that I record these episodes all over the time space. But and I went in the first year that they were operating, so that was like a little bit of oh hey. You've been doing this thing that's reserved for the young folk for a very long time, but you're still having fun. So why the hell not? But yeah. So me becoming mommy, just my first steps. Maybe we should make this part 1. How about that? We can do a part 2 where I'm a little bit more clued in with your information. Maybe I'll like go on a date with this premise in mind. Maybe I will get somebody to actually call me that within an erotic space. Give me more material to share. So thank you very much for joining me for Becoming Mommy, part 1. Wish me luck. I'm going to spend the next time until the next season Becoming Mommy part 2. So thank you very much for listening. And I'll speak with you next time.